to A Healthier You, the show that gives you all the latest and greatest health and wellness information to inspire you to live a life of balance and joy. Debbie Carlin Boyle is a health and nutrition coach, personal trainer, and fitness instructor who helps her clients live in balance with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. Please welcome your host, Debbie Carlin Boyle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to my show, Balanced Life with Debbie Carlin Boyle. I'm so excited that you could join us today. We have a great show, so stick around. Also, I like to be an interactive show. So if you're around, my Facebook page is actually Fit by Design. So if you go to Fit by Design Facebook, I'm streaming live right there. You can ask a question or make a comment, or you can call in if you have a question for me, a comment for our guest, or a question. The number here is 323-284-7826. So give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. And having said all that, we have a great show. So my guest today is Christina Bauer, otherwise known as a midwife of the soul. Christina has been a practiced healer for 23 years and now assists others to discover the truth of their being and their true self, which is truly the end of one's suffering. Christina works with individuals in her healing office in Pacific Palisades and also has a weekly online TV series and podcast called Moving Beyond Illness, Anxiety, and Depression. Christina's book, The Power of Our Unshakable Presence, has a final release in just a couple of weeks. And to top it all off, she also has a transformational movie coming out at the end of this year. So I'm just so happy that I can welcome to my show the amazing Christine Bauer today.
Thank you.
Hi, Christine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, there's our applause. Audience, stand. Thanks, Tony. Welcome to the show. Everybody's so happy you're here. So Christine is actually a return guest. When Dell and I had our show, Christine was a guest on the show, and it was a really very compelling and a wonderful interview, which I re-listened to recently. And you've got such an interesting story and doing such great things now in your life, for yourself and others especially. So what I'd like to do is just touch a little bit on your story, on your background, and give our audience a little idea of where you've come from, so then we know why you're doing what you do today.
Okay. So when I was growing up as a young child, I had this ability which I didn't recognize that everybody else did not have as well. And that was that I could see people's pain that they were carrying around inside of them. And when I was little, that was not really such an issue.
Because you thought everybody could
right.
see everybody's pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I didn't understand was why what people told you and other people when I would hear them speaking was not what I saw inside of them. So I learned as I got older that we hide the things.
Now, are you
that are
talking
real.
both physical and emotional pain? Or are we talking
both?
Both.
You know, like it's just a simple thing if somebody asks you how you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, I'm fine, everything's fine. And you can see below the surface that things are really not
That's
fine.
very powerful for you to have as a young child.
Yes.
But again, you didn't know that
any
nobody
different.
else
Right.
didn't have that same thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
But then as I got older, it became not a fun gift to have.
Right.
Because once my mind really kicked in and I started thinking about things, which you don't really when you're a young child,
Mm-hmm.
you're just in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But the older I got, the more confused I became, and it also colored my world in a real darkness, because that's what I saw in people. Instead of seeing what was
The
right
joy,
and good
yeah.
with them, I was seeing what was wrong inside of them.
And that takes a piece of you and just drills into you too. You feel their sorrow. So
yes, yeah.
wow.
So that became a very not so fun way to live. And the older I got, coming into being a teenager and seeing the world through those eyes was not a fun way to live.
I can imagine. So how did that play out?
When I was 15, I actually had had enough. I decided I was ready to leave this world. I did not want to be in a place where so much suffering was happening, because that's what I could see.
That's what you could see.
And so I attempted to take my life and ended up having this near-death experience, which truly transformed my life. And it has a lot to do with the basis of the work that I do today, and that when I had my near-death experience, I had the insight. I was given the perception, a different perception of what my life had been like while I was in it. So, we're living our lives. We think it's about a certain thing, or we look at things and see them a certain way. But through this process, I was given this insight that showed me all these ways in which I wasn't able to see from my mind as I was living in those experiences.
Wow. So were you on the other side at this point, that you were seeing these things? And so having the near-death experience, was this the part that allowed you to see what you had been missing out on because you were not in the physical presence anymore?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was like once I lost consciousness, I found my real consciousness, my real awareness that exists, that we don't always have access to because it's clouded by the distraction of our minds.
That's right. That's right.
So once that was out of the way and I could see from a whole different perspective, it gave me so much hope.
I bet.
That life was more than what I had seen. And I also received the understanding of why I was able to see the things that I did see and what I had come to do with that. So that experience helped me to see that there's just so much more to this life than we are aware of until we have the opportunity to see from a perspective that's not shaded by our minds.
So could you see what was going on? So it was pills that you took. So could you see what was going on as people were like trying to revive you and you were in the hospital? You could see that. Okay.
Yes, I went from the first part of the experience was just felt like I was going to sleep. At first I thought I was going to be sick, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was just going to go to sleep. I was so tired. And then the next thing I remember was one of my friend's fathers had shown up somehow. I wasn't even aware of how. And he was talking to me, and he was the paramedic.
Oh.
So at first I could hear him, but I didn't have any sight. And then all of a sudden when I did have sight, I was seeing from up above the scene.
Yeah, you were
I could see
like a
him.
fly on the wall watching the whole thing play out.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I watched
Powerful.
that for a while. I had this insight. And then from there, I was taken somehow into a place of being able to see almost like a reevaluation from the time I was born until the time of that.
So your whole life up to that point, you were 16?
15.
15, and so your whole life flashed for you that
Yes,
first
exactly.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you say when you woke up from that you had a better understanding of life. Was that immediate or did that? No. Okay.
I had an understanding that I had just had an experience that I didn't really understand. It was devastating for me because being free of the way our minds perceive things was extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was happy and joyful, and life was about love. And this innate wisdom and understanding that just is there.
Yes.
And from, coming back and being back in my human personality and the activation of my mind, I wasn't able to access that.
Yes.
And so I knew that it had been real. It was more real than anything I had ever experienced before. And it also, things would come to me that it's almost as if they were showing me that it was real, the experience that I had had. But because I think of my age and not having any support, it didn't really all come together for me until later in my life.
You were still, like your frontal lobe, which is your ability, part of your brain to be reasonable and to reason, was still coming into play. That happens like when we're 25. So some things that, even though made sense to you, may not have made sense, because if you get me. So, well, that's pretty powerful stuff. And then, so that segued you into studying. How did you go from this understanding, once you did realize how that life wasn't all darkness, how did that play out to where you decided you wanted to make it your life's work to help others realize that as well?
I didn't really decide it for myself initially. I came upon a tremendous group of women when I was in my early 20s. And one of the women that I was working with was a healer. And she pointed out to me that this was my work.
Gift. Yeah.
And I barely understood her language because I didn't come from a family or an environment that even spoke that on those terms.
Yeah.
But as she spoke with me, and then she would give me things to do or think about, and it was like an activation. It just really brought forth an understanding and awakening inside of me that apparently was ready to come forth at that time.
And she knew it, and she wanted to access it for you.
Exactly.
Wow. And how long? And that was in your 20s, you said?
Yeah, my early 20s.
Okay. So for the purposes of today and where you are now, we're going to talk a little bit today about discovering one's true self and how, sort of that's your story for yourself, but how does somebody access that for them if they don't have this kind of mindset, if you will, that you possess? Mm-hmm. What do we do?
So that was my quest, was trying to find that place that I had experienced during that near-death experience.
Okay.
I knew that it existed. I had come upon other people in my life who had guided me to other people, like gurus and people who had an understanding that life was more than what it appears to be.
Right.
And almost always that path was through meditation. So I played with meditation for years. And while I was in that world of playing with meditation, I was also working with people at the same time through the work that I'd been doing with the woman that I had met, and also finishing school.
Mm-hmm. And you were finishing school for what?
For massage therapy and psychology.
Right. One of the other wonderful things that you are.
So once I was able to access that place again within myself, it's one thing to have an understanding that it exists, and it's another thing to be able to access it at will.
Oh.
And so once I was able to allow that space to come forward again within myself, and I kept practicing and playing with that, then it gave me the understanding of how one might be able to do that as well. Granted, not everybody has a near-death experience, but everyone does go through pretty severe periods of suffering in their life.
Yeah.
And that's usually when we're inspired. We want to find a way out. So when I work with people, we work with mostly identifying what we are not. Because what we are is not something that needs to be found. It already is there and exists, even though it's not in the forefront.
Yeah, you say we're so much more than what our personality is.
Yes.
So our personality is sort of what you see on the outside and the way that we present ourselves to the world and to others. but they're so much deeper than that, is what you're saying.
And our personality is who we've become identified with. We actually think our personality is all that we are.
Yeah.
And once we awaken to the fact that this is not true, that there is another part of us, this other part of us that has access to everything we've been looking for through the personality.
Right.
Happiness, peace, contentment, companionship, all of the fulfilling aspects of life are temporary experiences through the personality, but they are the essential essence of what we are at our core.
Oh, I believe so too. That's part of my balanced life motto and logo, is that all of those things have to come together in order for us to feel peace and joy. There are so many elements of life that have to be in alignment, and we actually have the power to create that alignment. Mine is dealing with my clients is a little bit more on the physical, here's your homework, here's how I want you to be mindful about how you eat. Be mindful to exercise, be mindful of how you treat people, be mindful of going to the supermarket and what you're buying, and bring creativity into your life. So they're more physical activities that overall bring the balance into alignment, into a full circle. Without any glitches, which nothing is ever perfect, But from what I hear from you is that it would go even deeper than that, than the surface of the physical, and access the mental part of more than our personalities and more of what we physically do to keep ourselves sort of quote unquote healthy or well.
Yes, just how you're sharing with people how to become more aware and conscious of what they choose for their bodies.
Yes.
We also can become more aware and conscious of what we're choosing and believing in our mind stream with our thoughts.
Yes. That's sort of the three principles theory of what Dell and her world is, the thought, mind, and consciousness.
Yes.
And not giving validity to the negative kind of thing.
Yes. And all of those things are incredibly important, and they all assist in the awakening of who we truly are. The difference is that when we access that place of who we truly are, we don't have to watch what we eat or make sure we exercise or speak in a certain way to somebody, because it's just a natural unfoldment from our being. We would naturally choose those things.
Yes, so it just happens.
But the more that we do choose them when we're not in full alignment or when we're not resting fully in ourself, our true self,
right,
then making those choices consciously clears some of the resistance and the negativity, so it makes it easier to access our true self.
Makes total sense. So how do we tap into that? How do we access those tools that we need beyond our personality to...
Awareness.
Okay.
Awareness is the point of power.
Okay.
First, we become aware of what it is that is happening. Then we have the opportunity to notice that as we're aware of what's happening, there's somebody that it's happening to, and there's the part that is aware of it. So we've identified ourselves as the one it's happening to. But if the one that it's happening to is being observed by something else, who is the one that is observing? So in that recognition that in and of itself creates an awareness of we are more than what we think we are.
Okay.
Because we're able to witness what's happening. When we shift our attention and our focus from the one that it's happening to the one that's observing, that's when an immediate change starts to take place. In addition to the awareness, I work with people to practice short little increments of presence or meditation.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
30 seconds to a minute to start, because what I find with most people is we're not comfortable in the silence, especially in this day and age when we're stimulated every day, all day long.
Right.
So just even becoming comfortable with resting in a place of inner silence is a journey in and of itself.
Yes.
So we have to begin to clear away what is distracting us from the truth of the recognition of the truth of that which we are. Once the distractions have been cleared away, then it's obvious. It becomes obvious.
And you do that with individuals, or I know. So I've listened to your podcast, and believe it or not, we're 5 minutes out, and I want to give people an idea of how they can do this. So can they do this through your podcast and help gain those tools of clearing out, getting their mind in the place they need to access? And what I know you have the book coming out.
The podcast is designed for that specifically, but it also really works or is intended for people who are really suffering. Meaning, I mean, everybody's suffering to some degree if we're living in our minds because of the insanity that goes on in our thoughts. But when somebody, the name of the podcast is Moving Beyond Illness, Anxiety, and Depression. The people that I work with oftentimes are in a pretty severe state. And so there's practices, meditations, contemplations, things to contemplate within the podcast that will help somebody to do this on their own. That's the intention of it.
Okay.
The book also is a journey that gives practical steps that one can take in order to access this on their own.
Oh, good. When is your book coming out?
I'm in the final proofing process right now. I think it should be maybe a couple of more weeks.
Oh, just weeks. We're talking weeks. Wow. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really happy about that because as I've worked with people, I've wanted to have a simple book that I could refer people to that they could work step by step.
Almost a workbook. That's what I was kind of asking. Where are those? How can people?
Yes.
Do you also? So you work with individuals. Do you work with groups, or is that a little more difficult, or online, or?
I work with groups both in person and online. Groups actually are much more powerful.
Oh, because they share.
People share, and the power in numbers is different than just one-on-one. One-on-one healing has different attributes that are helpful. You know, I can work with somebody to clear their energy field, which when we're in a group setting, that's a much more, it's a bigger task.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because you're dealing with more energies.
But when we're in a group, then there's a group energy that develops that can shift for everyone. So it really works. It really works both ways. Some people are more group oriented. That's an easier place for them to let go when they're witnessed by others. And some people are very private and intimate and just need to take that healing journey by themselves.
And this is more in your office that you do this?
In my office and also online. I do sessions over Skype as well.
Oh, good. Okay. And, I mean, there's so much, and there's so many things that what do you think is the most important quality someone has to have in order to awaken their true self, if we were to put it in a nutshell?
Definitely, I would say a willingness.
Okay.
And with that willingness comes humility. Because when the ego, the personality, is very strong and it wants to run the show, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to being willing to seeing what else is available.
Yeah, you block that off,
yes.
what could be truly beneficial to you.
Yes, the ego, our personality, has to be willing to step down or to step aside so that what else is there can be revealed.
Yeah. And that is something that you do when you work with people and help them access that and get that. So we talked about we talked about your TV series. Let us know, what's this movie that you have coming out?
The movie is a movie that should be coming out, I believe, like around December, January.
Okay.
And I was asked by the TV platform that I'm doing the TV series with, Transformational TV, They were looking for transformational leaders from all over the world to come and film this documentary in Switzerland last year.
Oh, I remember when you were there.
I said yes, and it's basically a documentary to help people understand and inspire people to know that they too can transform whatever's happening in their lives, that we're not limited by where we come from or what our current experience is.
Those limiting beliefs are not, do not put validity on those beliefs.
Exactly.
That
yes.
you can. So powerful. So there's so much more about Christina that we could spend 2 hours going into and beyond. Believe me, she works with those with death and dying. And she's doing wonderful things to help people heal, either after the loss of a loved one, or if somebody is going through a challenging diagnosis, and knowing that they are nearing the end. She's amazing. So I want you to tell our audience all the ways they can access you, and then I want you to leave us with one little words of little bullet point words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with them today with.
So people can access me through my website, www.christinabauer.com. All the information is there. My podcast is there. The TV series is there. My telephone number is there. I also have a Facebook page, Christina Bauer, Intuitive Healer. I have a YouTube channel, which is also Christina Bauer Intuitive. I have meditations there that anyone can listen to that are geared toward anxiety, depression, accessing our true self, becoming more aware, and the phone, which you'll find on my website.
Yeah, everything is there. And you need to read all the things that Christina does in the healing realm, because it is pretty remarkable. So I thank you for I know how busy you are with your practice, so I thank you for taking the time to come join me today and get this information out to my viewers. I really do appreciate it. One last little word of wisdom for my viewers to leave them with today.
I would say that have faith and hope, especially in our world the way that it is today, right now. It appears as though things are insane at this moment in the outer world, but when we are able to tap into the truth of our being, we can see from a whole nother perspective. Everything is in perfect harmony. So have that faith and hope and let it lead you to the discovery of it.
So well said. There's nothing else I can say to that except thank you. And I thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you guys next week on Balance Live. Bye, everybody.